Hello everyone, dear friends, welcome to my channel. In this video, I wanted to talk about what emotional intelligence is, why it's important to develop it, and why sometimes it's even more important than IQ. Have you ever noticed how some people easily manage to resolve a conflict, handle a stressful situation, or come out unscathed from any situation? And yes, there are people who know how to negotiate, and these are precisely the people with emotional intelligence. Most likely, it is more highly developed than in other people. So, let's try in this video to determine whether your emotional intelligence is high or low. As usual, I will provide examples and we'll talk about how to improve emotional intelligence. I will provide examples of why developing emotional intelligence is so important and how it can be developed at all. Watch this video until the end, because at the very end, I will give the most important method on how to strengthen yourself in terms of emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? In general, here I would like to recommend to you the book by Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence. I have read it and it very coolly explains why emotional intelligence is better than IQ in the social world, in all this development, why it is more important, how it affects career, family, life, and everything in general. And all of this is explained there. Biologically, meaning there is a lot of terminology about how the brain works, about what reactions we used to have. In short, it's super interesting, read it. But let's cover a bit of theory. What is emotional intelligence? In general and in simple terms, emotional intelligence is the ability to control emotions. That is, the ability to manage them, to be aware of, and understand the emotions of other people. And according to the book, there are 5 components of emotional intelligence. And based on these components, you can work on your emotional intelligence in different ways and improve it. That is, some aspects may lag while others may work better. The first component is self-awareness, the ability to recognize your own emotions and understand the impact of your emotions on certain actions. And here it even affects the fact that I can, for example, determine that I'm getting tired, which means I need to stop working, otherwise I will experience burnout if I continue to overwork. This is all about self-awareness, a super important skill. In general, learning to understand yourself, to foresee that I shouldn't do something now, otherwise it will be worse later, is amazing. The second component is self-regulation, the ability to control emotions and respond consciously. Instead of yelling at someone, we take a pause and then calmly start talking as you recall your life. Have you had situations where you acted on emotions without thinking and later regretted it? The third component is motivation, the drive, the desire to move towards your goals. The fourth component is empathy, the ability to understand the feelings of others if you can recognize the feelings of other people. If you can see, for example, sadness in your friend, even if they say everything is fine, it means it will help you be a truly good friend, a good person. And the fifth component is social skills, the ability to communicate, build dialogue, and resolve conflicts. So let's try to understand whether you have strong emotional intelligence or not. And the first point is that you often feel misunderstood. It seems to you that people do not feel your pain or do not treat you with the attention you would like. And this is what it looks like in the practice of your life. But in reality, in practice, you might simply not know how to express your emotions or desires in a way that others understand. The second point, criticism affects you more than you would like. It might be harder for you to accept feedback. And instead of saying, okay, this is a great opportunity to improve myself, you are more likely to retreat into yourself and say, they think I'm not good enough. That is, you do not try to work with the feedback, but rather take it negatively. The third point is related to emotions. It's the ability to be aware of them, understand, control, and work with them. Everything related to your emotional background. For example, you might easily lose your temper or somehow recall flare up in a situation where it would be better not to do so. Or, on the contrary, withdraw into yourself, start ignoring problems, and accumulate grievances. And this is all about emotions. The fourth point, you find it difficult to say no or to stand up for your opinion. Such a person, as a rule, finds it difficult to dispute something or defend their point of view. And because of this, they do things they don't want to do because they can't say no. The fifth point is related to the third. You find it difficult to express your emotions. And why is it related to the third? Because until we learn to recognize our emotions, it will be difficult for us to express them. And because expressing emotions doesn't always happen in a healthy way for you, that is, instead of trying to have a constructive conversation, you react sharply, which can lead to problems in relationships. Because it's difficult to deal with your emotions, the sixth point also follows. This is mental rumination. Such a person, as a rule, constantly replays their dialogues and grievances in their mind. It's very easy for them to get involved in a conflict, to forget some unpleasant conversations. That is, even if the conflict is already resolved, sometimes the dialogue is still replayed. Look, I tried to compile a collective image of what emotional intelligence is. And if, for example, you fall short in one of the points, it doesn't necessarily mean that your emotional intelligence is poorly developed. It's clear that there may be some other reasons, deeper reasons. I provided these factors more as examples for you to consider, and if what might not need work, and if there's something that can be improved. That is, if something doesn't align, it doesn't mean everything is bad. You are an underdeveloped person. These are just some indicators that can be corrected. Emotional intelligence is a skill, not an innate quality, and this skill can be developed. Next, I will explain, as I initially wanted to say, why emotional intelligence is important at all. As I already mentioned, with weak emotional intelligence, we tend to internalize all grievances and express ourselves less. We establish personal boundaries less, which makes the body more susceptible to burnout and stress. If emotions are not processed, all of this can turn into chronic tension. For example, you are tired and would like to rest now, but you feel guilty for being inactive. So people with emotional intelligence are able to timely recognize, or at least retrospectively realize, that they are tired and that it's the right time to rest, and they accept this without feeling guilty. They simply go and rest. And here, it's not even a question of productivity, it's a matter of self-care. Another important point is that if we cannot read our own emotions, it is very difficult for us to read the emotions of others. This is generally the case, but not always. Sometimes we can read others' emotions well, but cannot read our own. But generally, people with low emotional intelligence cannot read the emotions of others. And this often leads to these people projecting their own grievances and fears onto others. For example, my friend responded to me in a slightly irritated tone, and I immediately start looking for the reason within myself, even though in reality, he just had a tough day and was simply tired. And in a situation with high emotional intelligence, I simply acknowledge the fact that, well, it happens, and move on with my life. But in a situation with low emotional intelligence, I start replaying in my head what I did wrong, what I said wrong, why she yelled at me, or why she spoke in an irritated tone. Emotional intelligence also, of course, affects money and career, because often it's not the smartest who get promoted, but the most sociable. You can be any kind of professional, but if you don't know how to communicate, negotiate, or understand the needs of others, you will be bypassed on the career ladder. It's difficult to communicate with toxic people. It's difficult to communicate with people who are constantly inconvenient. And, I'll give an example here. In my life, there was a person who said no to everything, who firmly defended their boundaries. If he didn't like something, he would say so. Directly, he would criticize. And on one hand, you could say, wow, you're so self-aware. Wow, you know how to stand up for yourself. You must be so cool. But actually, no, this person was completely inconvenient, unpleasant. It was very difficult to build any interaction with him because there was some criticism for everything. And I once asked a psychologist, because on one hand, it's great that a person knows how to protect and stand up for themselves. And to which she told me that on one hand, yes, it's really cool that a person knows how to defend their boundaries, but a person lives in society and they must be able to consider the needs of other people. That is, it's even like at the beginning of a relationship. They say in women's courses, like, the guy should conquer, tell her no. And actually, to some extent, it can really work. That's how our psychology works. If at the initial stage we sometimes say no, sometimes yes, it can catch on, and the person may develop additional interest. But if we always say no to a person, disagree, criticize, be toxic, then of course the person will lose all interest. Because it's clearly been shown that no, how many more signals are needed? And if you always say yes, then yes also becomes uninteresting. Therefore, there should be some kind of balance. You need to be able to communicate with a person. People with high emotional intelligence advance faster because they don't just complete tasks, they know how to negotiate. Low emotional intelligence involves a lot of self-criticism and thoughts. I'm not good enough. And again, in such moments, mental chewing gum kicks in. If a person makes a mistake, someone with high emotional intelligence will say, okay, a mistake, I'll go think about how to fix it so that it doesn't happen again. Meanwhile, a person with low emotional intelligence will sit, dwell on it, and think, oh my God, what have I done? And ultimately won't see any positive changes. And I tried to bring all these points to you to show that emotional intelligence truly affects many areas of our lives. And it's really important to develop this skill. So let's talk about how to develop emotional intelligence. I tried to gather some real practical advice for you. By doing so, you will most likely be able to develop the skill and 1. Grow with self-awareness, and here the practice of stop reaction will help you. Before reacting, stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this? Is this my conscious choice or an automatic reaction? Try to record strong emotions every day and reflect at the end of the day. Why did you experience them? What were these emotions? And what situation influenced this emotion? For example, in the moment, if a colleague irritates you, stop and think, why does he irritate me? Is it because I am tired right now? Or is he really an unpleasant person? You know, I often experience this. If I don't like someone and I observe this feeling within myself over a long period, I start to figure out what's wrong. Is it something about me? Is there something about this person that triggers me? Is there something I don't like? Do I not like how he looks? Or do I want to be like him? What is causing this emotion? I try to understand the reason for this emotion and uncover what's behind it, especially if it's a strong one, for example. If, for instance, someone annoyed me once and it didn't happen again, and then the interaction goes smoothly, I don't think about it at all. In general, I would recommend keeping an emotion diary. I mentioned this in all my videos, so I won't dwell on it here. Just Google it, but if it's difficult, just try. Record the 3 main emotions of the day. The second point, work on self-regulation, emotion control. And here the 10-second technique will work. Before reacting or replying to a message, give yourself 10 seconds. Literally count, wait, become aware of the emotion, and only then respond. Breathing can also help. Any techniques. The box breathing technique, where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds, and so on in a circle. That is, for example, if you receive a remark during a meeting, don't respond immediately. Wait, become aware of the emotion, take a few breaths. The third point, develop empathy. In fact, many people find it difficult to listen, and it's unpleasant in communication when a person only talks about themselves. And I realize that I'm actually very good at listening to people, and probably because of this, I am a good conversationalist because I try to engage in the dialogue. I genuinely react to what the person is telling me. And because of this, I think I am able to read other people's emotions because I learned this, because I truly listen to people. And when we observe people for a long time, when we listen to them for a long time, we begin to understand them. We start to understand their emotions, their behavior, their motivation. And also a super simple practice can help here, like how would you feel in my place? A role switching exercise. It might seem like a childish sight, but it really works. Try to put yourself in another person's shoes. How would you react? How would you respond? What would you do? And even if it's not the case, try to understand what motivated the person. Why did this person need to do what they did? Try to justify the person. Try to explain to yourself why they needed to do it this way. If you, for example, disagree with something. And of course, it's very important here, besides developing empathy, to develop communication skills, to be good, to learn to be a good listener, not to devalue the person, not to judge, in other words, to be a pleasant person. And speaking of being a good conversationalist, fourth point, develop social skills. Instead of asking, how are you? It's better to ask, what interesting things happened over the week? In other words, try to ask deeper questions, try to notice facts about the person. Remember some micro moments that you can recall later, and I assure you, this will be useful to you. In general, try to notice facts and try to use them later in people's lives. And finally, I wanted to present to you the last skill, probably uniting all the skills I mentioned. It's called pause and reflection. When you feel an emotion, don't react immediately. Stop, identify your emotion, name it, become aware of it. Instead of the usual reaction, ask yourself 3 questions. How can I look at this differently? What facts am I missing? What reaction of mine will lead to the best outcome? For example, you received unexpected criticism. Stop, acknowledge it, that yes, this really happened to you. Yes, you feel sadness, you feel anger towards the person, and now you want to take offense and write a resignation letter. Stop. Tell yourself, I feel uncomfortable because I feel this way because, and try to rethink this situation. For example, this is not criticism, this is not an attack, but simply feedback for my improvement. My manager wants me to grow, for my income to grow. This is great feedback that I can improve upon. Wow, he cares about me, he remembers me, he gives me feedback, and he genuinely wants me to become better. So he hasn't given up on me. Wow, that's great, I can improve. And this really allows you to look at the situation differently. The plan for the entire video is to prove to you that there are 5 skills that can and should be developed, and to show that emotions can and should be worked on, not only from a psychological perspective, but also from the standpoint of certain social skills. Please read the book. With that, my video comes to an end. Like, comment, and share what you will take for yourself. Goodbye, everyone.